In today's session, we are going to discuss about data sources, guys. So remember this point: data can come into ServiceNow platform from different sources. So data can come into ServiceNow platform from different sources, guys. Okay. So here, let me just go to the personal developer instance. Okay. So I'm just opening the personal developer instance here. Okay. So in the personal developer instance, if you type data sources here, if you type data sources here, so these are the data sources. Okay. So I'm going to create a new data source here. I'm going to create a new data source. So here, let us say user data load, user data load. So well here guys, user data is there in the somewhere in the LDAP server. Okay. So lightweight access directory protocol. Okay. So here every company, okay, every company store all the employees data. Okay. LDAP server. Okay. So LDAP server, directory system, LDAP server says system stores user identities, passwords, and usernames. So here every employee, every company will store, okay, every company will store employees details in the LDAP. Okay, you can see what is LDAP here. So LDAP, lightweight directory access protocol, is a software protocol is used for location data of data about organizations, individuals, and other resources such as files, devices on public and corporate environment. LDAP is lightweight version of the directory access protocol. So guys, here in other words, what I'm trying to tell you here is in this LDAP server, all the employees details are stored. All the employees details are stored in the LDAP server. Okay. So here in the beginning, I told you. So user accounts are not manually created. User accounts will be created automatically. These user accounts will be created automatically. We don't create user accounts is what I told you. Okay. So what we will do is we will create a data source here. First of all, we will store them in a temporary table, temp user table. Okay. So here, what I will do is I will select LDAP here. I will select LDAP here. Okay. So when I select LDAP here, I have to choose LDAP users here. Okay. So let me just open here. So these are actually LDAP configuration details, guys. You will get it from the you will get it in the organization. Okay. So LDAP OU definition. So here in the OU definition, so you are mentioning here, it has to pass the details in the user table. Okay, it has to pass the details in the user table. Okay. So these all are the LDAP server details, RDN, query field, okay, and filter. These all are actually LDAP, LDAP server related ones. So here you have to choose server here, LDAP server. Okay, server name you have to provide, LDAP server name, the email address, password, domain name. Okay, so you are actually creating a LDAP server here. First of all, you are creating LDAP server here. After creating the LDAP server, you are creating definition, OU definitions. Okay, so LDAP OU definitions you have to create. OU definitions table name is, so OU definitions table name is this one, LDAP OU definitions. So you have to create a LDAP OU definition. In the OU definition, you have to call the LDAP server here, and you have to tag this LDAP OU definition in the data source here. So that what happens, it will actually import the user details. It will actually import the user details from the, okay, you can see here, it will actually import the user details from LDAP server into this temporary table. So after that, you will create a transform map between temporary table and ServiceNow user table. You will create a transform map between ServiceNow temporary table and ServiceNow target table. So target table is user table here. This is a transform map, guys, which we already have discussed. Okay. So after that, what you will do? So you do the field mapping here. So you do the field mapping here. Okay. So here you are not able to see auto map matching fields here because you did not do the test load. So you have to use test load 20 records here. If you click on test load 20 records, then in the transform map, you will be able to see auto map matching fields because we test load did not happen. Test load is not successful, guys. So test load is not successful. That is why we are not able to see auto map matching fields. So what we will do, we will create a, we'll do a field mapping between temporary table and target table. So we'll do a field mapping between this temporary table and this target table, and we'll apply queries on username field. We'll apply queries on username field. Username field means login name field. So that what happens? Okay. So you are creating a data source. This data source will actually fetch the user details from the LDAP server. So all the employees details are stored in the LDAP servers, guys. So here what happens? This data source will actually fetch user details from the LDAP server, and it will actually store this into this temporary table. So earlier we used Excel sheet, right? So here we are not using Excel sheet here. What we are doing here? Can any one of you tell me? Okay. So earlier we have actually loaded the data into temporary tables using attachment, right? So using file, right? We using Excel sheet, right? Now in the temporary table, how are we loading the data? How are we loading the data into the temporary table? Okay. This data source is actually fetching the user details from LDAP server. It is actually storing this temporary table. So that means user details are actually, ServiceNow is actually fetching the user details from LDAP server. It is storing into this temporary table. Once the records are created into the temporary table, this transform map will run. This transform map will actually transform the details into ServiceNow target tables. You understand my point? Hmm? So remember this point, guys. Here I have chosen type as LDAP here. So LDAP means lightweight, access directory protocol. Okay, lightweight directory access protocol. So you are fetching the details from LDAP server. So those user details you are storing into this temporary table first. Okay, you are storing those details into this temporary table first. From the temporary table, you are actually loading the data into ServiceNow target table. Okay, you are loading the data into ServiceNow target table. Okay, so once the data loaded to temporary table, this transform map will run. This transform map load the data into temporary ServiceNow target table. So in place of LDAP, if you select JDBC, JDBC means Java Database Connectivity, guys. JDBC means Java Database Connectivity. JDBC. You can see Java Database Connectivity. JDBC means Java Database Connectivity. So what exactly it does is that ServiceNow will connect it to database. Okay, ServiceNow will connect to database. Which type of database is it? It will connect to MySQL database. So it will connect to Oracle database. It will connect to SQL server. Okay. So ServiceNow can connect to database. So you will select a JDBC here, and you can select a type of database here. and you can provide the instance name. These are the server details. So these are the server details: instance name, database port, username, password, server, query timeout, connection timeout, table name, use last run date time. Okay. So if you select a Sybase here, if you select a Oracle here, so Oracle ID, Oracle SID, Oracle port, username, password, server, query timeout, connection timeout, table. So you have to mention here. So if you select a, SQL server, you have to provide all these details. If you select a MySQL, so you will have to select all these details. So what exactly ServiceNow does? ServiceNow will connect to database, and from the database, whatever the query that you mentioned here, this is a database query. You can see specifies SQL. You have to write SQL query here. Okay. So you don't have to learn SQL, guys. You don't have to learn SQL. So you can connect to any SQL team member, and from him you can actually get the SQL query here. Okay. So what exactly it does? ServiceNow will actually connect to SQL based on this query. It will actually fetch the details. Those details will be stored into this temporary table. Those details will be stored into this temporary table. Okay. So ServiceNow can connect to database. ServiceNow can connect to LDAP. ServiceNow can connect to OpenID. So OpenID, the OIDC means OpenID connectivity. So OIDC. So OpenID connect. So ServiceNow can connect to OpenID as well. Okay. And you can select a file type as well. So here, file, format, Excel sheet attachment. Okay. Attachment. You can just save this one. Sheet number one, header number one. Okay. So attach an attachment here. Excel sheet problem. So if you remember, guys, we have used data load, right? After data load, it will create a data source, guys. Load data, right? After load data, whenever you click on submit, it will create a data source. You can see here, data source is created or not. So you can see this data source. This data source we did not create it. There should be a data source which is already created. This is the data source. So you can see this is the name that is created. This is the temporary table. Type is actually file, attachment type. You can see sheet number one, header number one. This is the transfer map between temporary table and target table. So whenever we load the data, it will create a data source of type file type with attachment. So remember, so I'm going to show you one more thing here. I'm going to show you one more thing here. I am going to load the data now. Load data. Okay. Create table. Temp users. Uh, User details are not there here. Okay, it has loaded the data into temporary table. If you see, a data source would have been created here. Data source. Data source would have been created. Okay. So you can see just now a data source is created of type file type with the Excel sheet format. So this data source is now created, guys. You can see temporary table, temp users table. Okay. So whenever we load the data, it is creating a data source or not? Did you notice that, guys? So whenever we load the data, it is creating a data source. You can see here just now, 1 minute ago, it has created this data source. It has created a data source of type file and format of Excel sheet. Okay, a format of Excel sheet. File retrieval method here is attachment here. Attachment here. So whenever we load the data, it will definitely create a data source, guys. File is actually one of the data source. Okay. So file is actually one of the data source. So go to data sources. Okay. So this one we created. Okay. This one we loaded the data. So this is also a file type and it was created 6 days ago. Okay. And now whenever we load the data, this data source has created. Okay. This data source has created. So instead of, guys, remember, instead of using load data, okay, what we can do is we can directly create a data source. We don't have to go to load data. We can directly create a data source here. Okay. What I am doing here is I am deleting this one. I'm going to delete this one as well. If I load the data again now, you can see it will create a data source. Okay. Now we will see data source created or not. Just now a data source is created. So whenever we load the data source will be created, guys. Remember this point. So instead of using load data, what I can do, I can directly create a data source as well. Okay, I can directly create a data source as well. Okay, what you can do, you can just open this one. You can open this one. You can select the temporary table name. You can provide the temporary table label. Name will be automatically populated. You can select the file type as file, format as Excel sheet, sheet number one, header row one, and file retrieval method. You have to select attachment. You have to select the file here. You have to select the file here. After selecting the file, you have to create a transform map here. You have to create a transform map. After that, you can click on test load 20 records. See, whenever the data source is created, you have to click on test load 20 records, guys. Remember. So whenever the data source is created, you have to click on test load 20 records. After clicking on test load 20 records, it will be easy for you to do the field mapping. Okay, it will be easy for you to do the field mapping, guys. Okay. So it is easy for you to do the field mapping. Okay. So once the data source is created, you have to click on test load 20 records. Then you can do the field mapping easily. You can use queries. You can write transform scripts. You can write source scripts. You can write run script. You can write you can use choice actions, create, update or reject, create, ignore or reject. So you can do all those things, guys. Okay. So you can see we have different type of files. uh, you can different type of data sources, file type. So in the file type also we have different file retrieval method. So file retrieval method, so let us say my file is in my downloads folder. So this problem file is there in the downloads folder. Let us say this file is not there here. Okay, this file is not there here. This file is there somewhere in the Unix server. Let us say WFTP server. Okay, open this one. So consider here I am using online demo. Okay. So username demo, okay, username demo, password demo. So open the server here. Username demo, password demo. So I am logging into the server. Okay. So welcome to Wing FTP online demo. Download the files under the downloads folder. Upload the files into upload folder. So here you have two folders here in the server. Okay. So you have download folder. Opening the download folder here. So in the download folder, uh, you have a file here. Let us say whatever the file that I am showing here, this file is there in the FTP server. Let us imagine this file, whatever the file that you are seeing here, this problem file, this file is there in the FTP server. Okay. So here, let me try to upload this one, upload the file. No upload permission. I don't have permission to upload this one. Okay, it is saying I don't have permission. So let me do one thing. Let me take this particular file name. So let me take the file name here. I am taking the file name here. Okay. Just to take the file name, schedule underscore planner underscore template. So it is actually under the downloads folder, guys. Under downloads folder. So what I will do in ServiceNow, here I'll mention here FTP. Okay, server name, download folder, username is demo, password is demo, and server is this one. Server is this one. So you will mention this server here. What exactly ServiceNow does? So ServiceNow will connect to the server. ServiceNow will connect to the server. It will find this path. It will actually authenticate using this username and this password. So it will actually pull that file. It will import that file into this temporary table first. You understand my point? You understand my point? Okay. So here, this is actually a server, guys. This is a server. So in this server, there is a file. Okay. Let us imagine this is a file. Okay. Okay. In this file, there is a data. ServiceNow has to ServiceNow has to connect to this particular server. It has to get this file into ServiceNow. It has to import the data into this temporary table. So let me create one data source so that you will be able to understand better. So guys, remember this Excel sheet, this problem Excel sheet is not there in ServiceNow, not there in my laptop. Let us understand. This particular file is not there in my laptop. Okay, for now, consider this file is not there in my laptop. This file is there in the server. Let us imagine the problem file is there in this. The problem file is there in this server. Okay, so let us imagine the problem file is there in this server, guys. Okay, so here ServiceNow has to fetch this file into ServiceNow. Okay, ServiceNow, I'm going to create a data source here. Problem data load. Temp problem. Here I'm selecting file type as file Excel sheet. So here this file is Excel sheet, right? Excel SX. So this is Excel sheet, right? Okay. So sheet number one and header one I am keeping here. So file retrieval method I am selecting FTP because this is a FTP server, right? So WFTP server. So the path is actually download. This file is there in this download path, right? Then I am actually keeping server name as this one. Server name as this one. File path is actually downloads and username demo and password also demo I am giving. So that what will happen? ServiceNow will connect to this server FTP server. It will fetch this file into ServiceNow. It will load this data into this temp problem table. You understand now? Hmm? Okay. So if the file is not there in the FTP server, if the file is there in the HTTPS, so here you will actually provide the server name, port number, file path, username, and password. So ServiceNow will connect to HTTP file retrieval method. Okay, it will connect to HTTP file retrieval method. These are the file retrieval methods, guys. You can see file retrieval methods. Okay. So no proper information available here. These all are the file retrieval methods, guys. So attachment is actually one of the file retrieval method. FTP, FTPS, uh, FTPS are not recommended. These all are not recommended. So HTTP, HTTPS, SCP, SFTP. Okay. So SFTP server, SFTP server. Again, I have to download this one, guys. Okay, in the server, I can actually store my files. So after downloading it in the server, I can actually store my files, guys. Okay. So this problem file, I am storing in this SFTP server. Okay, this problem file I am storing in this SFTP server. So what exactly ServiceNow does? ServiceNow will connect to this SFTP server. ServiceNow will connect to this particular SFTP server, and here I'll have to mention the port number. I'll have to mention the path. I'll have to mention the username and password, so that ServiceNow will connect to that particular SFTP server. It will retrieve the file into target table. Okay, it will retrieve the file into ServiceNow target table. Okay, it will actually retrieve the file and it will store the details into the temporary table. And then immediately, as soon as the data is loaded into the temporary table, this transform map will run. So likewise, guys, we can actually retrieve the data from different sources into ServiceNow temporary tables. So we can retrieve the data from different sources. So from the SFTP server, FTP server, HTTP server, HTTPS server, from different servers, you can actually fetch the files, guys, into ServiceNow, and you can store them into temporary tables. As soon as the data is stored into temporary tables, these transform maps will run. Okay. You have file type, you have JDBC. In the JDBC, we have different formats. MySQL. In the MySQL, you will mention all these credentials. Okay. If you select Oracle, so you have to mention Oracle details. If you select a SQL server, so you have to mention all these details. These details will be given by the client, guys. As soon as you provide all these details, first of all, you have to use load data, load 20 records. Load 20 records successful means connection is successful. Means ServiceNow is able to reach SQL server. If the test load 20 records is not successful, that means connection is not successful. If the connection is not successful, you won't be able to load the data into temporary table. And you have LDAP here, and you have OIDC, OpenID Connect. You have a REST integration hub. Okay, so you have custom load by script. Okay, so we don't use them mostly. We don't use custom load by script. We will be using file JDBC or LDAP or OIDC. Okay, so these are the methods that we use to retrieve the data from external system into ServiceNow. Okay, you understand, right? Okay, so we can load the data on scheduled basis. We have scheduled data imports. Scheduled data imports. Scheduled import. You can go to the scheduled imports here. Okay, so what you can do is you can create a scheduled import. Okay, you can create a scheduled import. So here you can select the data source here. So problem data source I am selecting here. So problem data load. Okay. So what exactly will happen is that, so daily, we can say run as daily. Daily, this data source will run. This data source. We have seen data source now, right? For now, so far. So we have selected this data source here. So as we have selected the data source here, so daily this data source will run. It will actually load the data into temporary tables and transform map will run daily. Okay. So remember this point, guys. Okay. So daily this data load will happen daily. Daily this data source will run. This data source will actually connect to the server. Okay, this data source will connect to the FTP server. It will fetch that file. That file will be imported into the temporary table, and then transform map will run. Transform map will actually transform the data into ServiceNow target table. Okay, so you can see here. So likewise, you can actually schedule the data sources, guys. You can schedule the data, okay, using data sources. So you have to select a data source here. So daily at this particular time, this data source will be running. This data source will actually connect to FTP server. It will fetch that file, and that file will be imported into the temporary table. From the temporary table, you will run the transform map. The data will be loaded into the target table. You understand my point? Everyone. So likewise, guys. So likewise, you can do weekly data load. Okay, you can do weekly data load, or monthly data load. Okay, you can do monthly data load. You can do once. Okay, you can do once. So likewise, you can actually do the data load, guys, using data source. Whenever you click on execute now, the scheduled job. This is like a scheduled job, guys. The scheduled job will run. It will actually run this data source. This data source will fetch the file from FTP server. It will import the data into temporary table. From the temporary table, transform map will run, and finally data will be transformed to the target table. Okay. You understand, right? Guys, you understand, right? So any questions from anyone regarding this data sources, guys? So data sources credentials will be given by the clients, guys. Okay. Data sources. Let us say if you select a data source here as, okay, let us say if you select a data source here as JDBC, so Java database connectivity, then you have to connect with the SQL team. So SQL team will actually share those credentials. If you select file type as JDBC, so JDBC team will provide the credentials. If you select OIDC, so OIDC team will provide the credentials. Likewise, ServiceNow will be fetching the files from different sources. It will load the data into temporary tables in the ServiceNow. Okay. Any questions from anyone, guys? I have unmuted everyone.
This is Prithvi. Regarding mid servers, if at all the mid server is down means, or else if it has to be built means, it will be managed by us or else system team or
So mid servers, right?
yes.
So in the data source, if you discuss about mid servers here, So if the mid server is down, okay, so system won't be able to connect with external system. Okay,
Yes.
ServiceNow won't be able to connect with external systems. We have to take care of the mid servers.
ServiceNow team has to take care.
Yes,
Okay, how to, I mean, initially how to build that mid server and all.
that's a separate topic. We'll discuss separately about it. Okay.
Okay.
Any questions from anyone?
Yeah, hi Uday.
Yeah. Hi.
What is the main difference between the FTP and SFTP?
So even I am not pretty much clear about this FTP servers and SFTP servers.
Yesterday, one of the ServiceNow developers is my sister. She's asked me this question. That's why I'm asking.
So these SFTP servers, FTP servers, I am not pretty much clear about it
Mm.
because this is out of our service no scope. Okay. So these are actually the servers where you can actually store the files. Okay. Different type of servers. So you are able to understand, right, how the data is coming into ServiceNow. Let us say client will tell you, I have some data. I have some data in the SQL server. I have to fetch that data into. I have to load that data into ServiceNow. Okay. So in that case, what you have to do, you have to create a data source using database Java JDBC type as JDBC, and you have to select the format here. You have to select the format, database name, database port, username, password, and server name, query. So you have to mention all the details here. So that what happens, ServiceNow will be able to connect to the SQL server. It will load the data into this temporary table. Okay. Any questions from anyone? Regarding data source, so regarding data source, they will ask you like let us say I have data somewhere in the Linux server. I have to connect to Linux server and get the file into service. Now how do you do that? Means then you have to remember that you have to answer them that. So there is a data source concept. In the data source concept, you have to select the file type as file. You have to select the retrieval method as FTP or SFTP or HTTP method. So then you can provide the credentials. You can fetch that file into ServiceNow. So you can just answer them briefly. So there won't be many questions regarding data sources, guys. Mostly the questions will be about client scripts, business rules, scheduled jobs, uh, reference qualifiers, email notifications, email scripts, APIs, glide records. So the mostly the questions will be on those areas. So I've seen many interviews, but data sources is very very less likely asked regarding data source interview questions, guys. Okay. So this is not an important topic, guys. Okay. This is not an important topic. Okay, guys. I'm winding up the session for today and we'll be connecting tomorrow. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all.